Hello. In this review I'll be talking about a French self-propelled artillery, known by several names: the AMX Mk.61, 105mm, the AMX-105, and the AMX-13 105mm. There are a few other names tied to this self-propelled gun. From the name you can tell that the AMX-13 tank served as the basis for the gun. It was developed alongside the tank and entered service with it. I've already touched on the AMX-13's development earlier in my review of another French tank, the AMX-30. If you haven't seen that, the link's in the description. I won't go into the chassis development here, that's a separate review. What I will cover in this video is why the French needed this kind of artillery in the post-war period and what the vehicle was like overall. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit like. It helps make our content better. Let's burn. It was 1946 when France began developing another post-war tank, the AMX-13. More than 7,000 AMX-13s were produced, some of which served as chassis for other systems. In particular, it was used as the base for a new self-propelled howitzer that would later become the AMX Mk.61. Around the same time, the French started working on a 105mm towed howitzer called the Howitzer de 105mm Model 1950. Also known as the 105mm MLE-50TF or simply MLE-50. As the name suggests, it was ready for service in 1950. During World War II, the French had used the American 105mm howitzer M101 and wanted to create a domestic version that was similar in concept but ideally, with improved performance. As it turned out, the light tank AMX-13 and the MLE-50 howitzer were being developed in parallel. The engineers decided to combine the two, which led to the creation of the AMX Mk.61 self-propelled gun. The 105mm MLE-50 howitzer had a barrel 23 calibers long, was fitted with a muzzle brake and a gun shield, had an average rate of fire of 6 rounds per minute, and could hit targets at ranges of up to 14,500 meters. A major advantage was that it could fire the same ammunition as the M101. The French also developed their own 105mm high-explosive anti-tank round that was effective against tanks. Even before the AMX-13 officially entered service, the first prototype of the new self-propelled gun appeared in 1950 and was sent for testing. Trials lasted about 2 to 3 years. The exact dates are a bit unclear, since France was working on several projects at once, but given that the new self-propelled gun saw action during the Suez Crisis in 1956, claims that the AMX Mk.61 only entered service in 1958, and not in 1952, are incorrect. In fact, the self-propelled howitzer was ready by 1952 and entered mass production in 1953. From then on, the self-propelled howitzer was exported to the Netherlands, Indonesia, Israel, and Morocco. The AMX-105 saw major combat use twice, during the Suez Crisis, on Israel's side, and later in the Six-Day War. As for its various designations, there were several versions: AMX Mk.61, Mk.62, and Mk.63, as well as AMX-105A and AMX-105B. The AMX-105A was supplied to the French Army. The AMX-PRA, short for Panzer Rups Artillery, was the version delivered to the Netherlands, equipped with a gun that had a 30 calibers long barrel instead of 23. For Switzerland, a special variant was developed, the AMX-105B, also known as AMX Mk.62, featuring a fully rotating 360 degrees turret. A few prototypes were sent to Switzerland, but the model never went into production due to lack of demand. In 1969, France began phasing the AMX-105 out of service, marking the end of its career. It was replaced in French service by a newer domestic self-propelled howitzer, while other European countries opted for the American M109. The Netherlands began retiring the AMX-PRA in 1985, surplus vehicles were sold to Indonesia and Morocco, and the rest were scrapped. The French self-propelled howitzer was not particularly outstanding for its time. It had been developed in haste, driven by the need to rebuild France's military potential and to produce a homegrown self-propelled howitzer that would reduce reliance on American equipment. Now, let's move from history to what the AMX Mk.61 actually was. As I mentioned earlier, the AMX-13 light tank served as the chassis. The driver was positioned at the front left, He had his own hatch and 3 periscopes, with the central one replaceable by a night vision periscope. The engine and transmission compartment was located at the front right. It housed an 8-cylinder SOFM GBX-8 gasoline engine producing 250 horsepower, paired with a transmission with 5 forward gears and 1 reverse. The suspension was torsion bar type, with 5 road wheels on each side. The vehicle featured an all-welded steel turret, though it offered limited protection for the crew. With a total weight of 16.5 tons, armor protection was far from ideal, but for a self-propelled gun, armor wasn't the main concern. The turret mounted a 105mm MLE-50 gun with a .23 caliber barrel. It was equipped with a muzzle brake, and the gun shield from the towed version was carried over. The maximum firing range remained the same, up to 14,500 meters. Gun elevation ranged from -4 degrees to +66 degrees, while horizontal traverse was 20 degrees to the right and 20 degrees to the left. The turret itself was fixed. Only the Swiss AMX-105B version had a fully rotating turret. The crew consisted of 5 men, driver, commander, gunner, and 2 loaders. Loading and aiming were entirely manual. Along both sides of the turret were racks for shells and propellant charges. It used separate loading ammunition. The self-propelled howitzer could carry up to 58 rounds, mostly high explosive, but also high explosive anti-tank rounds capable of penetrating up to 350 mm of homogeneous armor at a range of 1,000 meters when hitting at a right angle. The racks could also hold other equipment and supplies. The crew entered the vehicle through double rear doors, and there were also 2 hatches on top of the turret, one for the commander and one for the gunner. The commander had his own cupola with periscopes providing 360-degree visibility. A machine gun could be mounted on top for the commander. Either 7.5mm or 7.62mm, usually the French AA-52 machine gun. The machine gun carried 2,000 rounds. On each side of the turret, there were firing ports, allowing the crew to fire their personal weapons without leaving the vehicle. The turret also had external mounts for tools, a pickaxe, shovel, crowbar, and other field gear. The double rear doors also contained special compartments for transporting necessary equipment and tools. The rate of fire was 6 rounds per minute, just like the towed version. The AMX Mk.61 measured 5.7 meters long, 2.65 meters wide, and 2.7 meters high. It could reach a top speed of 60 km per hour and had a range of 350 kilometers. Fuel capacity was 450 liters. In total, over 400 units of the AMX-105 were produced for the French Army and for export customers. So, that was the AMX Mk.61, 105mm self-propelled howitzer. I hope you found this video interesting and informative. Don't forget to subscribe and hit a like button. Clear skies to you all. See you next time, bye.